You are listening to the Embrace the Mud podcast, where we discuss all things related to healthy, joyful, and life-giving relationships. Why focus on relationships? Because the quality of our intimate partnerships and close connections influences our health, happiness, and longevity more than anything else in our lives. Relationships matter a lot, so together, let's jump into the mud, aka our messy relationships, pull some weeds, plant some seeds, and create an enriching environment where strong relationships can take root. I am your grateful host, Dara Posner. I am a relational disaster working toward relational mastery. I am also a positive psychology coach, a relational mindset coach, a blogger, and now a podcaster. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Embrace the Mud podcast, where we discuss all things related to healthy, joyful, life-giving relationships. If you are a fan of this podcast, please subscribe, follow, like, review, and share. Your engagement in this way is crucial to the success of the podcast, and I appreciate you taking just a few seconds to support my mission, which is to help people like you flourish in life and love. Today on the Embrace the Mud podcast, we are still in our series, Relational Weeds, talking about the bad behaviors that destroy relationships because they prevent two people from emotionally connecting and staying connected. They breed insecurity and unease, and we want to pull them out of our relationships as fast as we can and instead plant seeds of productivity that grow connection and help our relationships flourish. Today's weed is shame. Shaming in relationships is a particularly egregious form of criticism or contemptuous behavior that communicates unworthiness to the other person. It invalidates them as a human being. It essentially says, you don't matter. What does shame actually look like in relationships? Why does it happen? And what can we do instead of shaming? That's what we're covering today on the podcast. So let's dive in. All right, so today we are talking about shame. That's the relational weed we're going to be unpacking together. And, when I think about what shame is for me and my understanding of it, the way that I think of it is like the worst kind of criticism, right? There are criticisms that speak to your weaknesses, for instance. So someone says you're lazy, someone says you're irresponsible, someone says you're selfish, right? Those are criticisms. And of course, criticism is another relational weed. We do not want to do that. That does not help. It hurts relationships. Definitely does not create safety. But shame doesn't just speak to like a person's weaknesses. It speaks to their value as a person. So some statements that would be shaming types of criticism might be, you are pathetic. You're disgusting. Oh my God, you're ridiculous. Be a real man. You have really let yourself go. Look at you. What a psycho you are. Or statements that start with like, what kind of a man would insert whatever behavior they just did, or what kind of a woman would, fill in the blank. And I mean, it just hurts my heart to even give those examples, but those are shaming comments. And shame is sometimes not as mean as that necessarily. It could be, behaviors that are like eye rolling, sighing, dirty looks, being sarcastic. So they're not like mean statements. They're, behaviors that just kind of say, you mean nothing. You don't matter. Shame communicates, there is something wrong with you. It goes beyond labeling and judgment. It's outright disgust. So those are a few examples of what shame could look like in relationships. And so the question is, why does this happen? Why do partners who love each other shame one another? Shame between two basically decent people. We're not talking about narcissists or abusers here, but two basically decent people is usually, not always, but usually caused by a vast accumulation of anger, resentment, and bitterness that has now altered the person's view of their partner. They have now likely gone into what the Gottmans might call, or do call, negative sentiment override, meaning they primarily see what is negative about their partner and the relationship. Even in good moments or on good days, they no longer are able to see the good. Their view of their partner has deteriorated into just negativity, and they're stuck there. Time has now led to this accumulation of unaddressed or unresolved anger, resentment, bitterness, frustration, disappointment. What can you do to change that? Right? Well, the first step is just to become aware that it is happening. I'm in negative sentiment override. I cannot see positives about my partner or this relationship anymore. And now you're going to have to make a decision to change that by starting to deliberately look for the positives. You're going to want to remind yourself, and I'll give you some tips for that in a couple of seconds of, okay, how do I balance this with remembering the good things about this person and why I choose to be with them and in this relationship? The next thing you want to do is investigate the anger that you feel. It clearly has a message for you about what is important to you or what it is that you need. And rather than continuing to project that anger out onto your partner by shaming them, explore it to get the information that you need and take those realizations into some repair conversations with your partner, if that's what's appropriate and needed, or simply reflect on what your anger is teaching you and use that to take responsibility for what you need and what is important to you moving forward. Another thing you could do is identify the judgments and negative conclusions that you've drawn about your spouse or your partner and decided are just true, and begin challenging those conclusions. What else could be true? How can you give them the benefit of the doubt? How can you try to start looking at them and things about them in a new way? And also practice turning toward them rather than away from them when they make attempts to get close to you. Sometimes when we're in that place of just total disgust, we are, get into a habit of turning away. And that is one of the actions that the Gottmans also say is just going to erode the connection and eventually lead to the demise of the relationship. Is not often enough turning toward your partner when they make what they call bids for connection. So looking out for those bids where your partner is trying to reach for you, trying to connect with you, even in small ways. They just make an observation about something out loud. And not staying silent, responding and saying, oh yeah, I see that, or whatever it might be, just noticing that and choosing to respond positively. And finally, remind yourself of why you fell in love with your partner, and practice daily gratitude for the things that come to mind, or other things that you just truly adore and appreciate about them. And use this as a basis for giving your partner more grace and acceptance, and expanding in your own capacity for loving them for all that they are. Our thoughts and feelings affect our behavior, so start with what's going on in your mind and identify the root of any of these negative feelings that have accumulated that are causing you to shame, instead of extending compassion and empathy to your partner, which is what's really needed. What do you do if you are on the receiving end of shame in your relationship? You will need to lovingly set some boundaries with your partner. You can let them know that you love them, that you understand that they are angry, and that you want to hear them out and you want to work through whatever is bothering them, but that you will not stay in conversations where you're being shamed. Let them know that that just hurts you so much and makes you unable to really listen to them and what's going on for them, which you absolutely want to do. And so that for the sake of the relationship, you're only going to talk when you can both be calm and kind. Okay, so that is all I have on the topic of shame as a relational weed. Tomorrow I'll be back with, I think we have at least another 2 or 3 more relational weed episodes. So I'll be back with another one tomorrow. In the meantime, please remember, you are wired for love and connection. You are capable of love and connection. You are worthy of love and connection.